It was my last Monday at Orion. 41 years had passed since I first walked through the front doors carrying a laptop, a Stanford degree, and the quiet certainty that I knew how careers worked. Now I walked the same hallways much more slowly. The buildings had changed. The technology had changed. Almost every face had changed. Only one thing remained the same. People still arrived each morning hoping to build a meaningful life. I smiled. Some things never change. My office was almost empty. The family photographs had already been packed. Awards had been boxed and shipped home. The shelves that once overflowed with books now held only one item: a worn leather notebook. Its corners were frayed. Its pages had yellowed with time. The words, "Things Stanford Never Taught Me," were barely visible on the cover. 41 years earlier, it had been an empty notebook. Now it contained an entire lifetime. Questions, mistakes, lessons, dreams, reinventions, every chapter of my work span had quietly unfolded between those pages. At 9:15, my computer chimed. One new email. The subject line was simple: "Thank you." I almost ignored it. There had been hundreds of farewell messages during the previous week. Then I noticed the sender. I didn't recognize the name. Curious, I opened it. Dear Maya, you probably don't remember me. 10 years ago, I attended one of your university talks. I was the student who stayed behind after everyone else left. You asked me one question. Who do you need to become for your next chapter? At the time, I thought I needed career advice. Instead, you gave me a better question. I carried that question into every promotion, every setback, every career change. Today, I'm leading an AI healthcare company with more than 500 employees. Last week, one of our young engineers asked me how to plan her future. Without realizing it, I asked her the same question you once asked me. That's when I understood something. Leadership travels through people. Not presentations, not books. People. Thank you for changing a life you probably didn't even remember touching. I hope I can do the same for someone else. I read the email twice, then a third time. The room became very quiet. For decades, I had measured success by visible things: products, revenue, growth, innovation. Yet none of those accomplishments had followed me into this moment. One conversation had. One question. One young student. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. David was right. Leadership multiplies. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Come in. The door opened. Sophia walked in, followed by Ethan, Carlos, Elena, and nearly 20 other leaders. Some had worked with me for 20 years. Others for only 2. One by one, they filled the office. Carlos held a small wooden box. We have something for you. Inside was a compass, beautifully crafted from walnut and brass. On its face, instead of north, south, east, and west, were 4 words: learn, build, lead, reinvent. I smiled. You forgot one? Carlos grinned. We didn't. He turned the compass over. Engraved on the back was a single word: legacy. No one spoke for a moment. No one needed to. After they left, I placed the compass beside the notebook. The 2 objects represented my entire career. One reminded me to keep moving. The other reminded me how far I had traveled. Neither represented a destination, only a journey. That afternoon, I gave one final talk to the entire company. More than 3,000 employees joined in person and online. The auditorium was filled with faces from every generation. Some were beginning their careers. Others were preparing to retire. I walked to the center of the stage without slides, without notes, just the notebook. I held it up. This, I began, is the most valuable thing I own. People laughed. It isn't valuable because it's beautiful. It isn't. It's valuable because it contains every mistake I was willing to learn from. I turned a few pages. The first page was written after my first disappointing performance review. The last page, I smiled. was written this morning. The room became completely silent. I've learned many things over the last 41 years. But if I could leave you with only 5, I paused. Never stop learning. Protect your energy. Build people before products. Use technology to amplify your humanity. And remember, your career is rented. Learning is the monthly payment. I looked across the audience. I hope one day someone tells a story and your name appears in it. Not because you were the smartest person they ever met. Not because you had the biggest title. Not because you made the most money. Because you believed in them before they believed in themselves. The applause lasted longer than I expected. Not because of the speech, because it belonged to all of us. To everyone who had learned, failed, started over, mentored someone, taken a risk, become a beginner again. I realized then that a winning WorkSpan trademark was never about one person's story. It was about thousands of stories connected together, each one making the next one possible. That evening, I walked through the building one final time. The engineering lab where I had once doubted myself. The conference room where I had received my first 3 out of 5 performance review. The cafeteria where David had challenged my thinking. The innovation center where our AI transformation had begun. Every room carried a memory. Every memory had changed me. As I reached the lobby, I turned around one last time. 41 years. It had gone by in what felt like a single conversation. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. The same golden light that had welcomed me on my first day now illuminated my last. I took the notebook under my arm, the compass in my pocket. Then I started walking toward the parking lot. Not away from my career, toward the next chapter. Because WorkSpan had taught me something retirement never could. Purpose does not retire. It simply finds a new place to serve. I smiled as I looked toward the horizon. For the first time since I was 24 years old, I wasn't wondering what job came next. I was wondering whose life I might help change tomorrow. Several months after leaving Orion, I found myself exactly where my journey had begun. Stanford University. The campus looked almost unchanged. Students hurried across the courtyards with backpacks slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, coffee in hand, believing the future was waiting just beyond graduation. I smiled. 40 years earlier, I had been one of them. Certain, ambitious, completely unaware that life would become my greatest teacher. The dean had invited me back to deliver the commencement address. As I waited backstage, I looked down at the same notebook that had traveled with me for 4 decades. The leather was faded. The spine had cracked. Several pages had loosened with age. It no longer looked like a notebook. It looked like a life. The announcer called my name. The applause faded as I stepped to the podium. More than 8,000 graduates, families, professors, and friends looked toward the stage. I smiled. Not because I had prepared a perfect speech, because I no longer believed perfection mattered. Connection did. I graduated from this university many years ago. I began. I believed Stanford had taught me everything I needed to know. The audience laughed softly. I was wrong. I held up the notebook. The most important lessons of my life were written here. Not by professors, by failures, by courage, by curiosity, by people who believed in me before I believed in myself. The audience became quiet. I told them about the performance review that changed my life, about David, about Sarah, about the notebook, about the monkeys I had carried, about learning to become a beginner over and over again, about the day artificial intelligence forced me to reinvent myself once more. I told them that careers don't move in straight lines. They expand, they evolve, they surprise us. Most importantly, they shape us. I looked across the sea of graduates. You think you're here to choose a career? You are. But you're also choosing the person you're becoming. And that choice will matter far more. Near the end of the ceremony, one graduate raised her hand. She couldn't have been older than 22. If you could go back and speak to the 24-year-old Maya, what would you tell her? The question made me smile. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I closed my eyes for a moment. I could still see her, walking into Orion on her first day, confident, nervous, certain she had everything figured out. I opened my eyes. I wouldn't tell her how to become more successful. I'd tell her to become more curious. I'd tell her to protect her health as carefully as she protected her career. I'd tell her that confidence comes after courage. I'd tell her that every reinvention begins by becoming a beginner. And I'd tell her that the greatest promotion of her life would never appear on her resume. The graduate smiled. So what would appear? I smiled back. The people. After the ceremony ended, students lined up to say goodbye. Some wanted career advice. Some wanted photographs. Some simply wanted to shake hands. As the crowd slowly disappeared, one young woman approached quietly. She looked remarkably familiar. Not because I knew her, because she reminded me of myself. She carried the same mixture of excitement and uncertainty I had once carried. She held out a brand new notebook. Would you sign it? Instead, I opened to the first blank page. I wrote 4 words. Things school never taught me. Below them, I added 1 sentence. Never stop becoming. I handed the notebook back. This is yours now. She looked puzzled. I don't understand. You will. As I walked toward the parking lot, I realized something extraordinary. The notebook was no longer mine. Not really. Its ideas had already begun living in other people. Sophia, Ethan, Carlos, Elena, the student who had just walked away carrying an empty notebook. And perhaps one day, someone she mentored. That is how legacy grows. Quietly. One conversation, one act of courage, one lesson, one life at a time. Today, people occasionally ask me if I miss my career. I always smile, because I never left it. A winning work span isn't confined to an office, a title, or a paycheck. It lives wherever curiosity replaces certainty, where courage overcomes fear, where learning never ends, where leaders build other leaders, and where success matures into significance. Looking back across more than 4 decades, I now understand what my mother meant all those years ago when she told me to enjoy the journey. The journey was never about climbing a ladder. It was about becoming the kind of person who could help others climb theirs. That is the true measure of a life well lived. That is the true meaning of the winning work span trademark. And perhaps if my story has any value at all, it is this. Your career will not be defined by the first job you accept, the title on your business card, or the day you retire. It will be defined by the person you choose to become, again and again, through every season of your life. So keep learning, keep building, keep leading, keep reinventing. And when your own journey is nearing its end, may someone else's story begin with the words, "There was someone who believed in me." Because in the end, that is the only legacy that truly lasts.